Well, let's begin with taking a look at what's been happening in July. So, economic data for July, which was released in the beginning of the month, showed that the impact of the second wave has not been as bad as expected, at least on the economy. We're talking about high frequency indicators. Now, that optimism is being displayed by the Finance Ministry as well in its July report that says that there are visible signs of economic rejuvenation based on these high frequency indicators. Meanwhile, what about inflation, which has been bothering experts all around? While the Finance Ministry believes that will be smoothened over. My colleague Ruchi Bhatia is summing up for us what this report says.
There are visible signs of rejuvenation of economic activity in the second half of the fiscal year as per Finance Ministry's monthly economic report for the month of July, where Finance Ministry has said that the second wave of COVID-19 has had a limited impact on the Indian economy, and add to that, the pace of vaccination seems to be picking up, and that is giving the government confidence that things will become better from here on. In fact, if you look at the month of July, we are seeing that high frequency indicators are pointing towards a broad-based economic revival as far as the Indian economy is concerned. From GST collections to e-way bills to PMI manufacturing data, rail freight collections as well, all seem to be indicating that there is some sort of a turnaround coming in for the Indian economy. However, the society and economy are at a very crucial inflection point, and we will have to ensure that COVID-appropriate behavior is followed in the days to come as well, so that we are able to keep the lid on the numbers, even though the Delta variant is rearing its ugly head once again. In fact, Finance Ministry has said that the robust recovery in tax collections is also cushioning India's fiscal position as well, even though they have said that inflation continues to be a concern. However, they do expect that inflation is likely to smoothen out over the next coming few months.
All right, thank you for that, Ruchi. D.K Joshi, Chief Economist of CRISIL, now joining us to take the conversation further. Mr. Joshi, welcome to the show. Great to be speaking to you again. Do you share the optimism that we're seeing in the Finance Ministry's report? Are the July numbers and the high frequency indicators, at least, so GST collections, things like electricity consumption, even fuel consumption, digital payments, is all of that telling us that we are now on the road to recovery?
Yeah, I think most of the indicators look good right now. I think particularly for the month of July, and also I think going into August. I think you've already listed them out. But I also want to point out that the growth is not even. I mean, still, the manufacturing service sector is recovering much faster than the services sector, as you can see in the PMIs. I mean, the manufacturing PMI is above 50. And the services PMI is below 50. So clearly, I think the services sector continues to contract, I mean, as per the most recent information. Then I think coming to the confidence, business and consumer confidence, I think the report also talked about the RBI's consumer confidence survey. I think while the future expectations have moved into a positive territory, the current consumer confidence is still quite low. I mean, this is as per the July survey. So I think there are some concerns on the sustainability of demand. Well, a lot depends on the pace of vaccination, the intensity of the third wave, I think, which will have to be monitored closely. But overall, I think the things are somewhat better than they were a couple of months back. And there has been a gradual upturn, I mean, I would say. Having said all that, I think the point I also would like to make is that, number one, the rural economy, although I think monsoons have picked up, I think is a little less resilient compared to last year. I think one is because there was a hit from COVID, so it does impact the balance sheets of rural households as well. And then I think the food inflation is lower than non-food inflation. So what the farmers sell is not rising at that rate but what they buy is rising the prices are rising much faster. and the government Narega spending is also less compared to last year. So I think that is one thing to watch out for. And then other is, I think, which is particularly worrying, is that the COVID-19 is not over as yet. I mean, and we continue to see will continue to see restrictions in some form or the other. And here, I think the concern is more on the urban areas, where about 2/3 of the services are in the urban areas. Schools still closed. I think the associated services are weak. Restaurants, beauty parlors, etc. I think they are all operating below capacity, and and there has also been a balance sheet hit to the households from COVID-19. So consumption revival will have to be very closely monitored. I mean, and I think that's one worry for me.
Yeah. So I wanted to come. Yes, so we'll talk a bit more about consumption revival, Dr. Joshi, but just looking at, the forecast that is coming from the Finance Ministry and what it's based on. So it's also based on the sero surveillance reports, which shows that perhaps 2/3 of Indians may have been exposed to COVID-19 one way or the other, and then assumes that means third wave won't be that bad. We'll have some immunity from infections. Meanwhile, vaccinations are going on at a steady pace. We've crossed 50 crore. Is that something that gives you comfort that perhaps we will not have as bad a third wave as is being experienced in many parts of the world?
I'm not in a position to answer that question because, one, I'm not an expert in this area. But what I would say is that from past experience, the COVID-19 virus has been quite unpredictable. And the predictions for the waves that the epidemiologists and the other researchers make, I think their efficacy for beyond 1 month, I think, is very low. So you have to keep revising your number. So I think right now the forecasts are pointing towards a very positive direction. I mean, which is that the third wave is going to be mild. But we need to be at the same time, even the Finance Ministry report is saying that you need to follow the COVID protocol. You can't let your guard down. So there is a risk lurking around. I mean, so we'll have to see how it plays out. And for instance, we have a forecast of 9.5% GDP growth for this year, which is premised on a milder third wave. So clearly, the intensity of third wave will greatly influence what the economic outcome is. And so far, I think the predictions are pointing towards a milder third wave.
Let me come back to the consumption question, where you said that consumption picking up, consumption revival still continues to be a matter of concern. What really would push back consumption? Because it needs to come from incomes. And while the latest job reports show that unemployment levels are not increasing drastically, or even reducing a little bit, is there enough in the data to say that we will probably see consumption revival soon? The monsoon's been pretty decent as well.
Yeah, monsoons, I think, have turned encouraging. I mean, after a dry patch in the first half of July. So monsoon and reservoir position, I think, is reasonably good. The problem is that the households which have, where balance sheets have been hit, and people who are employed in the services, contact-based services, I think their incomes have been hit. I mean, there is little doubt about that. And I think not all of those activities have returned. They are far below what a normal would be. So I think the incomes of that category of people has been hit, and to me, I think the push to consumption demand can come if these households who have been hit hard are also supported via some government transfer.
Absolutely. We'll have to wait and see how the revival, at least no third wave on the anvil. All right. Thank you so much, D.K Joshi, for that. Let me move on